The laughing stock. Even was the joke of the lab. Every morning, when he walked into the Advanced Energy Research Facility, people would chuckle behind his back. Some didn't even hide their laughter. He was clumsy, quiet, and always carried a notebook too big for his bag. His glasses slipped down his nose, and his lab coat was always one size too big. "Watch out, the genius is coming," one of the engineers would say. "Maybe today he'll finally blow up the coffee machine." Another joked. Even never fought back. He just gave a small smile and kept walking. He was an intern, no one important, but he watched everything. He listened, and sometimes he heard things no one else did. It started with a hum. At first, it was soft, like a low vibration under the floor. Even thought it was just the machines. But every day, the hum grew louder, like something waking up. One afternoon, during lunch break, Even wandered into the old wing of the lab. No one went there anymore. The lights were dim, and the air felt strange. Dry, but heavy. He stood in front of a sealed metal door. On it, faded letters read, Cor I Ruum, Ki Pauki. The hum was strongest here. Even leaned in. He could feel the vibration in his chest. Suddenly, the lights above flickered. His hand brushed against the door, and it burned him. He pulled back fast. A small red mark formed on his skin. His eyes widened. He stepped back, but something even stranger happened. A glowing countdown appeared on the door. 96 o'clock, 00. Even blinked. Was he imagining things? He rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, the numbers were still there, glowing red. They were counting down. He ran back to the main lab, trying to tell someone, but no one listened. Stop wasting time, a technician said. Maybe the door shocked your brain. Someone else laughed. Even Dr. Lana Reeve, the lead scientist, didn't take him seriously. She was brilliant, powerful, and cold as ice. Even admired her from afar, but she never noticed him. Today, she did. He walked up to her in the hallway. Dr. Reeve, I think something's wrong in the old wing. There's a strange noise. A countdown. Maybe. She cut him off. Do you even know how to read technical data? You're an intern. Go organize the samples. The others laughed again. Even stood still. He wanted to say more, but his voice was stuck. He nodded and walked away. That night, he couldn't sleep. The hum echoed in his ears. Something deep inside told him, this is not a joke. He needed to go back. So he did. He returned to the old wing at midnight. The halls were quiet. The only sound was his own heartbeat. When he reached the Cor I room door, the countdown read, 88-3-12. It was real. Even pressed his hand on the wall beside the door. It was warm, too warm. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. A gust of wind passed through the corridor. Even though there were no windows, he heard a faint whisper, not a voice. More like something breathing. Then he saw it. Inside the small window of the sealed door, something was glowing. A swirling red storm. It looked alive. He backed away slowly. As he turned, his foot hit something on the floor, a small piece of metal. He bent down. It was a burned ID tag. The name was half melted, but the photo was clear. It was Dr. Lana Reeve, but younger, much younger. Even stared at the tag, confused. Why was her ID in this sealed room? Suddenly, the hum turned into a pulse. The walls trembled. Lights above him exploded with a loud pop. Even stumbled and ran back to the main hall. When he finally stopped, he was out of breath. His hands were shaking. He looked down at his palm. The burn mark was now glowing faint red. And in his head, one word echoed. Chosen. The countdown begins. The hum didn't stop. Even after Even left the old wing, even after he returned to his tiny dorm room above the lab, the low, electric sound echoed in his mind like a warning. He couldn't sleep. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling, while his ears listened to a sound that no one else could hear. But one thing was clear now. The countdown was real. Even sat up in bed, heart pounding. The burn on his palm still glowed faintly red. He pressed a cold towel against it, but it didn't help. The heat wasn't outside. It was coming from inside him. At breakfast the next morning, the others laughed like always. Jokes flew through the cafeteria. "Hey, Even, trip over your shoelaces again. Did you go ghost hunting in the old lab wing? Still hearing voices in your head?" Even forced a smile. But this time, the smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked around the room. No one believed him. Not the engineers, not the technicians, not even the security guards who were supposed to protect the building. And definitely not Dr. Lana Reeve. She stood at the front of the room, her sharp eyes scanning a tablet, ignoring everyone. Dressed in her usual black lab coat, she looked like a shadow with a brain. Brilliant, cold, untouchable. She never laughed, never smiled, never looked at Even twice. Until now. As Even passed her table, she glanced up. Her eyes paused on him, just for a second. Then she turned away again. Even walked faster. He didn't want her attention. Not yet. He had something more important to do. That evening, Even returned to the sealed room in secret. He made sure no cameras saw him. The hallway was colder than before. Lights flickered above him. The air smelled of burning metal. The countdown was still there. 80-22-16. It was moving fast. Too fast. Faster than before. Even took out a small camera from his pocket. It was old, and the lens had a crack. But it still worked. He filmed the door, the countdown, and the glow inside. Then he leaned in closer. The hum was louder now. It was no longer a sound. It was a feeling. Like the world was holding its breath. He put his hand on the wall, next to the door. This time, the wall didn't burn him. It welcomed him. Suddenly, a low whisper echoed through the hallway. He turned around. No one was there. Then the sealed door trembled. Even jumped back, eyes wide. The red glow inside the window pulsed like a heartbeat. And for the first time, he saw something move inside the storm. A figure. It stood in the fire, not burning. It had no face, just a glowing outline, and it raised its hand toward him. Even stumbled back in shock. The camera dropped from his hands and shattered on the floor. The lights flickered violently. Somewhere far above, an alarm started to beep. He ran. Back in his room, Even stared at his notebook. He wrote everything down, every sound, every number, every strange feeling. That night, the fire alarm went off in Storage Wing B. Small flames erupted from one of the equipment lockers. The sprinklers turned on, and the system was shut down for hours. The cause? Unknown. Lana Reeve stood outside the damaged wing, frowning. She ordered everyone out. Her eyes moved across the hallway and stopped, on Even. He looked away quickly. The next day, Evan tried again. He walked into the main lab while Lana was giving a report. "Dr. Reeve," he said quietly, "there's something you need to see. I know you don't believe me, but there's a countdown. It's getting faster, and something's inside the core room." Lana raised an eyebrow. "Do you have proof?" "I had a camera. It broke." She sighed and turned away. "Then you have nothing. Go back to your tasks, Even." But just as she turned, her expression changed. Her eyes dropped to his hand. The burn mark. It was glowing again, bright red. She stared at it for one long moment, then said nothing and walked away. Later that night, Even snuck into the security office. He watched the hallway cameras, only to discover something terrifying. The footage from the core room hallway was gone, erased, as if someone didn't want anyone to see it. He turned to leave and stopped cold. On the wall behind him, someone had written in black ink, 80 hours left. Let the fire wake. Even backed away slowly. The hum was louder again. Only now, it was whispering his name. Fire in the sky. The fire alarm wasn't stopping. It was the third time this week. Bright red lights flashed through the halls. Smoke filled the air vents. But the strange thing was, no one could find where the fire was coming from. Every lab checked out clean. No signs of overheating, no explosions, no broken wires. Still, the air was hot. Too hot. Even stood alone at the top of the stairwell, staring at the red sky outside the small window. It wasn't sunset, but the clouds glowed orange, as if the sun was stuck, burning the sky without moving. Something wasn't right. He looked down at his hand. The burn was no longer a mark. It had turned into a shape, a circle with a line through it, glowing softly under his skin. He covered it with his sleeve quickly. Down below, the hallway buzzed with confused voices. Technicians were checking the sprinkler systems. Security guards walked in circles, trying to act useful. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Dr. Lana Reeve. She stood straight, arms crossed, face unreadable. Even had been watching her from a distance. She hadn't spoken to him since she saw his glowing hand, but she had started to watch him too. Not in a mocking way. In a quiet, sharp way, like a scientist watching something dangerous in a cage. Even could feel it. Something else had changed too. The hum was gone. In its place was something worse. A pulse. It came every few minutes. A deep thump, like a heartbeat, moving through the walls, the wires, the very air. Even felt it in his bones. Every time it came, the lights flickered. Metal groaned. And people looked around, confused, like they had just forgotten something important. That night, Even couldn't take it anymore. He returned to the sealed room. The hallway was darker than before. The emergency lights were dim and red, casting long shadows. Even's footsteps echoed on the metal floor. He stopped in front of the Corey room door. The countdown read, 62904. Time was running fast. He stared into the glass window. The red storm inside had grown larger. It swirled like a cyclone, spinning slowly, filled with burning sparks. And in the center of it, the figure was still there. But it wasn't alone now. There were two shadows in the storm. One of them was smaller. It looked like a woman. Even squinted, his face close to the glass. And then she turned her head. It was Lena. Even jumped back in shock. He looked again. Nothing. The storm spun wildly, hiding the shapes. Was he seeing things? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed down the hallway. Even turned. A storage unit had collapsed behind him. Metal crates were scattered. Something moved in the shadows, quick and low. He ran. He didn't stop until he reached the open courtyard between the two lab buildings. The night sky was no longer dark. Above the facility, clouds spun in a circle. A red spiral of energy was forming, growing wider by the hour. And in the center of it, a shape glowed. A bird. A giant one. Wings of flame stretched across the sky. A tail of smoke curled behind it. The clouds burned brighter with each passing minute. It wasn't a weather pattern. It wasn't a storm. It was a message. Something was coming. The next morning, Lana called an emergency meeting. "We have detected strange heat signatures in the atmosphere above the facility," she said calmly. "I believe there may be a leak in the old core chamber. We are increasing security. No one enters that wing without clearance." She didn't look at Even, but he knew. She had seen it too. After the meeting, Evan tried to speak to her again. "Dr. Reeve, I saw something last night. In the storm, I saw someone that looked like you." She didn't speak at first. Then, quietly, she said, "That's impossible." "Is it?" Even asked. She stared at him. "You need to stay away from that door, Even. There are things in this facility you're not ready to understand." "Then help me understand," he said. "Please." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said one word, "Phoenix." Even froze. He had seen that word before, in faded letters scratched on the side of the sealed room. Project Phoenix. What is it? He asked. Lana's voice was low. A mistake. A dream that turned into fire. We tried to create something pure, endless energy. Instead, we woke something ancient, something alive. Even whispered, "The storm." "Yes," she said. "It's not just energy. It's a being. A creature made of light and fire. And now, it remembers us." Before he could ask more, the alarms blared again. Only this time, it wasn't a drill. The lights went black. A tremor shook the floor. People screamed. The storm in the sky began to descend. The firebird above the lab spread its wings. And the countdown continued. 59, 12, 44. Secrets in the flame. The facility was under lockdown. Flashing red lights covered the walls. Thick steel doors slammed shut, locking every hallway. Sirens echoed like a warning song across the labs. People ran in panic, not knowing what they were running from. Above them, the sky burned red. The Firebird, now fully formed, hovered over the main research dome, silent and still. Its eyes were glowing circles of light. Its wings were stretched across the clouds, blocking out the stars. And at the heart of the storm was Project Phoenix. Even stood at the edge of the chaos, heart pounding. The countdown had passed the 59-hour mark. Time was slipping like sand through his fingers. Somewhere behind him, a fire burst through a control panel. Sparks flew. A scientist screamed. But Even wasn't looking back anymore. He had questions, and only one person had the answers. Dr. Lana Reeve. He found her in the emergency command room, staring at a wall of screens. Her face was pale, her hands tense, her usual calm broken. "We lost power in Sector C," a technician shouted. "Temperature rising in lower levels. The fire, it's spreading through the vents, like it's looking for something." Even stepped forward. "You said it was a mistake," he said. "What did you do?" Lana didn't turn. "I was young," she said quietly. "Too proud. Too smart. I believed we could create something new. A clean energy source. Something that could power the world without pollution." She finally looked at him. But Phoenix was never ours to control. Even listened, eyes locked on hers. "We built the chamber underground," she said. "We created a synthetic core, like a baby star. It worked, for a while. But then, it began to grow. It started pulsing, thinking, reacting. You made it alive," Even whispered. "We gave it life," she said. "And then, we tried to cage it." Lana walked to a screen and tapped it. A hologram appeared. A spinning red sphere surrounded by flames. In its center, an energy pulse shaped like a heart. It was like a child. Curious. Hungry. It needed someone to connect with. It chose me at first. Then it grew too strong. I shut it down. Locked it away. She turned to Even. "But it didn't forget me. And now, it has chosen you." Even stepped back, his body suddenly cold. "Why me?" "You've been close to it. You feel it. Hear it. It marked you." He looked at his hand. The glowing symbol had changed again. It now pulsed in time with the storm above. "Can we stop it?" he asked. Lana paused. "Maybe. But not with machines. It doesn't trust technology. It needs a mind. A heart." "You mean a person?" "Yes," she said. "It needs someone to walk into the storm and speak to it." Even's throat went dry. Outside, the Firebird let out a silent scream. Windows shattered across the facility. Fire poured from the ceiling vents like rain. Suddenly, the screens around them blinked, and a new message appeared. "The fire knows." Everyone froze. Even stared at the words, then turned to Lana. "What does that mean?" She looked afraid now. "It means it's watching us. Listening. And it's awake." Suddenly, the power failed. The screens went black. Lights died. Darkness filled the room. Only Evan's hand glowed faint red in the dark. A few minutes later, backup power kicked in. That's when they got the worst news. The outer doors were melting. The firestorm wasn't just circling above. It was pressing in, burning its way through the building walls. But it wasn't random. It was following patterns, routes, specific paths. Evan noticed it first. He grabbed a map from the wall and traced the fire's movement. "It's heading here," he said, pointing to a chamber deep underground. "The core vault." Lana's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. That room's been sealed for years." "Not anymore," Evan said. "It's calling me there." Lana turned to a tech. "Seal every lower level. Double the barriers." The tech hesitated. "Ma'am, the fire's already there." The room went silent. Then Lana looked at Evan again. "There's something you don't know," she said. "When Phoenix was born, it didn't just choose me. It copied me." Evan's eyes widened. "What?" "It took my thoughts, my voice, my image. That's what you saw in the storm, a reflection of me." Evan swallowed hard. "Then what does it want now?" Lana answered without blinking. "A new reflection, a new bond. It wants you to replace me." A sudden boom shook the entire building. Flames poured into the upper labs. The facility shook like it was alive. Evan looked at the ceiling. He knew what he had to do. "I'm going to the core," he said. "You won't survive," Lana said. "Maybe," Evan replied. "But I think it's waiting for me." The betrayal. The air was choking with smoke. Alarms screamed through every hallway of the Advanced Energy Research Facility. Red lights blinked like dying stars, and the walls pulsed with heat. The firestorm was no longer outside. It was inside. It had broken through. Evan ran through the lower tunnels, holding a fireproof bag that Lana had given him. Inside it, blueprints of the core chamber and an old communication crystal made during the early Phoenix tests. Above him, fire crawled along the ceiling like it was alive. But that wasn't what scared him most. It was the silence. No humming now. No whispers. No voices in his head. Only waiting. Somewhere deep in the lab, Phoenix waited for him. The further he went down, the hotter the air became. It wasn't normal heat. It was intelligent, searching, like the fire was watching him from the shadows. And then he wasn't alone. Evan. The voice came from behind. He turned sharply and saw Dr. Riker. Riker was a senior scientist, one of the original minds behind Project Phoenix, a quiet man, older, sharp-eyed. He rarely spoke to interns. Evan barely knew him. But now Riker stood in the hallway holding a small device. His coat was torn and his face was sweaty. But his eyes were focused. "What are you doing down here?" Evan asked, still catching his breath. Riker didn't answer. Instead, he raised the device. In a flash, Evan's body froze. The air around him pulsed with invisible force. He dropped the bag. His knees hit the floor. "Why?" he stammered. Riker stepped closer. "You were never supposed to be part of this," he said coldly. "You were just a background piece. A nobody. But somehow, Phoenix chose you." Evan's heart raced. The hallway burned hotter. Riker crouched down. "I've worked on this project for 15 years. I watched them shut it down, hide it, lock it away like garbage. But I knew Phoenix was the future. I stayed. I waited." Evan gritted his teeth. "You want the storm to break free?" "No," Riker said, smiling. "I want to control it." He reached into Evan's bag and pulled out the crystal. "This is the key," Riker said. "Phoenix listens to emotion, memory, pain. That's how it bonded with Lana. And now, it's listening to you." Evan's skin was burning. His mark glowed red through his sleeve. Riker leaned in closer. "But Phoenix is too dangerous to trust a weak boy like you," So I'll do something better. He tapped the device again. You'll be the sacrifice. Suddenly, the hallway shook. A wave of red flame swept through the corridor like a living beast. Riker stepped back, holding the crystal high. But the fire didn't touch Even. It parted around him, like wind moving around a rock. Riker's eyes widened. No, that's not possible. Even stood up slowly. The mark on his hand was now glowing gold. The fire was protecting him. Phoenix had made its choice. I didn't ask for this, Even said softly. But I'm not giving it to you. With a surge of energy, the fire surged between them. Riker screamed as it surrounded him. But it didn't burn him completely. It held him in place, like hands made of heat. Even picked up the crystal and turned. He had to keep moving. The core was just ahead. As he reached the final door, his communicator beeped. Lana's voice came through, broken by static. Even, did you reach the core vault? Yes, he said. But there's something else. Riker, he tried to stop me. He's trying to steal control of Phoenix. A long pause. I should have known, she said. He always believed Phoenix was a weapon. I believed it was hope. The door to the core opened slowly. Inside was silence. No fire, no storm, just a large chamber glowing red at the edges. In the center, a floating orb of energy, like a sun trapped in a glass cage. Phoenix. It pulsed once, softly. Even stepped in, slowly. The chamber door closed behind him. He walked to the orb. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. It simply existed. And then, the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a memory. He heard his own voice from childhood, laughing, crying. The sound of his parents. The day he failed his first science test. The day he got into the internship. The day Lana called him a joke. The orb pulsed with every feeling. Phoenix was showing him his life. And then it asked a question. Not with words, with feeling. Will you burn to become something greater? Even stood still. He thought of everything. The mockery, the silence, the loneliness, the storm, the fire, and now, the choice. I'm not a hero, he said quietly, but I'll try to be. He stepped into the light, and Phoenix let him in, into the heart of fire. Everything went silent. When Avon stepped into the glowing light of Phoenix, it was like stepping out of the world. The sounds of fire, alarms, and even his own heartbeat faded into nothing. He floated. There was no floor, no ceiling, no walls, only light, endless, shifting light. Then the memories came, not his own, others. He saw Dr. Lana Reeve when she was young, laughing with other scientists. He saw her discovering Phoenix, the joy in her eyes. He saw her crying alone when the project failed. He saw Riker shouting, angry, betrayed. Then, he saw the moment Phoenix was born, a spark, a swirl of fire, and a quiet pulse that whispered, I am here. Evan's mind trembled. Phoenix wasn't just alive. It was lonely. Created in a lab, raised in silence, locked away, left to sleep, left to remember. And now, it wanted to be understood. The light around him shifted again. A shape formed. It was Even, but older, stronger. His eyes glowed gold, and fire danced on his arms. Is this who I'll become? Even asked. The figure didn't speak, but it nodded. Then the real Phoenix appeared. It was not just fire. It was a being of energy, a great bird made of swirling flame, light, and thought. It circled around Even, slowly. It didn't burn him. It held him. Then came the voice, not from outside, but from within. Will you carry the flame? Even closed his eyes. He thought of the people he'd met, the ones who laughed at him, the ones who ignored him, the ones he wanted to protect. Even Lana, who once called him a joke, but now trusted him. He opened his eyes. "Yes," he said, and the fire entered him. It didn't hurt. It filled him. The flame wasn't just heat, it was knowledge, strength, clarity, memory. He saw patterns in the world he had never noticed before. The hum in the walls, the pulse of the earth, the breath of fire across steel. He understood it all. And then, he woke up, even opened his eyes to the sound of screaming metal. The lab above was collapsing. Explosions shook the foundation. Fire was eating everything. He stood inside the core chamber, but he was no longer the same. The mark on his hand had spread to his entire arm, glowing with gold and red lines. His eyes reflected fire. His skin was warm, but untouched by flame. He stepped forward, and the door of the chamber melted open on its own. Even walked out into the burning hallway. A steel beam fell from the ceiling, but the fire around it froze in place, held by invisible force. The beam dropped harmlessly to the side. The flames obeyed him now. People ran toward him, shouting, confused, scared. "Who is that?" Someone whispered, "Is that Even?" He moved past them, calm and focused. He reached the emergency command room. Lana stood at the control panel, coughing in the smoke, trying to send out the last evacuation signal. Even entered, glowing like a walking star. She turned, and for the first time, she was speechless. He reached out a hand, and the fire around the room died instantly. She stared at him. "You merged with it," she said. "I didn't just merge," Even replied softly. "I listened. I understood. And now, I can stop it. But the storm above—" "I know," he said. "Phoenix doesn't want to destroy. It wants to be free, to be felt, to be remembered." He held up the crystal Riker tried to steal. "With this, I can speak for it." Lana stepped closer. "It'll kill you." Even shook his head. "Not if it trusts me." She touched his arm. For the first time, her voice cracked. "You were never the joke, Even. I just didn't see you." He gave her a small smile. "Now you do." Outside, the Firebird screamed in the sky. The building shook harder. Even turned and ran toward the roof access tunnel. As he climbed, the flames followed him, but gently, like wings guiding his path. He reached the top. The sky was burning. The Firebird was fully formed, circling the lab. Its eyes locked on Even. He held out the crystal. And he spoke, not with words, but with feeling. He shared his fear, his pain, his loneliness, his hope, his humanity. The storm froze. The bird hovered. And then, it lowered its wings. The fire peeled away from the clouds. The red glow faded into soft orange, then into pale gold. The heat lifted. The sky cleared. The storm was over. The countdown stopped. Lana watched from below as Evan stood on the rooftop, glowing like a sunrise. She whispered, "He did it." But Even wasn't moving. He stood still, breathing slowly, eyes closed. The crystal in his hand cracked, then crumbled to dust, and Even fell. The hero returns. The world went quiet. After the Firebird vanished into the sky, after the clouds faded, and the storm broke apart like dust in the wind, silence fell over the research facility. Not the silence of fear, the silence of awe. Lana stood at the rooftop edge, staring down where Evan had fallen. The building's steel frame groaned beneath her. Ash floated through the air like snow. Everything was still. She rushed down the stairs, her heart pounding harder than it had in years. She didn't know what she'd find. When she reached the lower deck, her boots crunched over broken glass and burnt wires. She pushed past emergency workers and lab techs. No one stopped her. They all knew where she was going. Even's body lay near the edge of the rooftop landing. Still, quiet, glowing faintly. Lana knelt beside him. His eyes were closed. The golden patterns on his skin were slowly fading. The mark on his hand, the symbol Phoenix had left, was barely visible now, like an old scar. She touched his forehead. It was warm. She whispered, "You saved us." No one laughed now. The same people who once called even a joke now stood in silence, watching, honoring, changed. But Lana wasn't ready to let go. She pressed her hand to his chest. "No," she whispered. "Come back." She closed her eyes. And then she felt it. A single breath. Slow, shaky, real. Evan's fingers twitched. His chest rose gently. And then his eyes opened. Soft, tired, but alive. The first thing he saw was the sky. Blue, clear, calm. The storm was truly gone. Then he saw Lana. "Hi," he whispered. Lana laughed, and it wasn't cold or sharp this time. It was warm, surprised, almost relieved. She helped him sit up. Around them, the team stepped closer, unsure what to say. He didn't need applause. He just needed to stand. With Lana's help, he rose slowly, every muscle aching. The last flames died around them, almost like the fire itself was saying goodbye. The storm had changed everything. Later, the media would call it the day the sky burned. Others called it the Firestorm miracle. But inside the lab, among those who had truly seen what happened, they called it something else. The day even became the flame. He didn't return to his old job. He didn't go back to being an intern. Instead, he helped rebuild the facility, not just with tools, but with knowledge. Phoenix had left something in him. A deeper understanding of energy, of life, of connection. He worked beside Lana now, not behind her. They redesigned the lab's systems, built a safe chamber for studying what remained of Phoenix's core energy, even became the bridge between science and something more, something alive. And one evening, weeks later, Lana asked him a question. "Do you ever feel it again? The fire?" Even looked up at the sunset. The sky glowed orange. "Not like before," he said. "It's quiet now, but sometimes, when everything is still, I feel it watching, not with anger, just with memory." Lana nodded. "It remembers you." Even smiled. "I remember it, too." Then she asked, "Do you regret it? Letting it inside you?" He thought for a moment, and then said softly, "No. Before this, I was invisible. A background voice. A joke. But the fire didn't laugh. It listened, and in the end, it gave me a voice." Lana looked at him, quiet. "You're not the same person anymore," she said. Even shook his head. "No, but maybe I'm finally who I was always meant to be." They stood there, watching the sun sink low. The sky was quiet, but far beneath the facility, in the lowest level of the earth, one last ember glowed behind layers of reinforced glass. It didn't move. It didn't pulse. But it waited. And if you stood close enough, you might hear a faint whisper. "Chosen."